Hello, welcome back. I hope everyone is handling the heat okay. It's so brutal. I've got another tournament this weekend, and I'm not looking forward to trying to, play chess with, a melted brain. So let's hope it cools down a little bit before then, but I'm sure you'll get to see the games, however melted my brain is, but hopefully that they're reasonable quality. So we're on to round two. I have the black pieces in this game. It's kind of funny. I actually am playing someone else called Aaron, or Aaron. But yeah, no, I decided winner keeps the name, so there's even more on the line with this one. But yeah, we had a really, really interesting game, and actually it gets off to a very interesting start immediately, because my opponent chooses to play 1f4. And I actually had seen they played this in the previous game as well. And this player is a really, really interesting guy, because I've seen him play f4, I've seen him play e4, I've seen him play c4, and I've also consistently, in classical chess, seen him play g4, which, if you don't know, is the worst opening move objectively according to the chess engine. But he's got a reasonable result there, and he's a very strong player. He's rated like 1915, and the fact that you have that rating when you're getting away with things like g4 is unbelievably impressive. So I'm taking this very, very, very seriously, even if his openings are not so objectively serious. But yeah, we got one f4, so no one g4, which I was a bit potentially sad to see. I wouldn't have complained about one g4. I mean, it's objectively not the best move. There are lots of ideas. I had a couple of ideas in response to this. The first thing I was thinking I was going to play, which is why I play on the line against f4, is e5. And this is the, what's it called? It's the From's Gambit, yeah. And I've got a very good record with this online, because there are lots and lots of tricks and traps to take here, and you're already threatening some mate ideas, so they probably need to go for something like knight f3. But then these things can get really tricky really quickly as well, because let's say that they just go for b3. This is a reasonably common idea, but stuff like knight g4 can immediately get you into a lot of trouble. I think this position specifically is okay, because you can actually block with the rook. But these things look very, very dangerous and very, very comfortable for white. The one thing that you need to be aware of when you play this variation is you are actually inviting a King's Gambit, which of course you shouldn't be too scared of, because it's objectively not the greatest thing in the world, but you need to have an idea here. You need to have some line or variation. I decided not to go for this, because I thought, if my opponent's playing f4, they probably know what they're doing quite well. And realistically, this is an opening trap that I play online, but my records with it online aren't fantastic. I've had some really nice tactical quick wins in it, but to be totally in a classical game, I don't really want to be giving up a gambit unnecessarily. So I played another variation, which I've seen before. I played g6, and the point of this is I'm simply just trying to use up my move, so that if they commit to something like e4, I can transpose into a Grand Prix attack, or I can go d5, and that can lead to a lot of other variations as well. So my opponent goes knight f3, and I go bishop g7 to get onto the long diagonal, and my opponent does go e4, which is probably, I mean, it's objectively probably the best move, but I don't know how much I love this decision, because you don't really get to achieve the structures you want with e3, b3, d3. Although those will be hard to achieve given the move order that I decided to play. Yeah, I played this move order as well because I saw that they played a b3 setup in the previous game, and I wanted to make those lines more challenging to achieve. But yeah, they go e4, I can play c5 here, and I have before, because I'm a Sicilian player, of course. I've played very similar things, but I like variation. Variety is the spice of life. So I thought I'd mix it up, play something a bit different. I played d5. And these lines can actually transpose into Alapin type things. Immediate Alapins, not delayed Alapins, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get f4 in. But I have seen these kinds of structures before in Sicilians. They're not particularly common, but yeah, it's a slightly different line. And I'm inviting more of a French structure. And I guess my opponent's argument is that g6, bishop g7 is not so helpful in these kinds of French structures, while I'm arguing you've extended, and I still have the opportunity to move my bishop out before I play e6 and shut it off for good. So I'm arguing against the overextension, and my opponent is arguing this is not so good in a French structure, and I'm going to have a lot of space. So I go c5 to try and prevent d4 from coming as effectively, and they throw in bishop b5 with check, which I don't love as a move, because I just get to play knight c6, continue my development, but they get to castle with tempo if they want, because they get the bishop out with check. So it's totally reasonable, of course, by my opponent, and they go d5. Yeah, again, totally reasonable move, makes a lot of sense. And we get a trade in the center. Of course, my knight cannot capture because it's pinned, and now I get my bishop out, so I have the option to play e6 at some point. My opponent castles. I don't want them to allow. I don't want to allow them the option to move this knight away and to chase my bishop out, because that could be really, really annoying. So I just choose to snap, trade those off immediately, which does give them a rook lift, but it also means that barely any of their pieces are properly developed. So I was feeling pretty comfortable. I've got two options here, realistically. The safe option, which I believe is e6 and knight e7. I can reroute my knight to f5, I can castle, and that just feels very safe and sensible. Or I go for the slightly sketchier option, which is a bit loose, but I think it is objectively good. I can go knight h6. And my opponent very quickly, not very quickly, they do take a bit of time, but they go rook c3. And they're applying a lot of pressure to this knight. And there is a question here, actually. There's a very difficult question for black to answer. And that's, am I concretely losing a pawn? And it feels like I am, because, okay, let's say that I go rook c8, that hangs the a7 pawn, which might be a problem. And if I go something like queen d7, yeah, again, they can apply more pressure. Moves like queen c5, moves like bishop e3 to apply more pressure to this pawn, and then takes and takes. And it's kind of difficult to defend, but conceptually I was quite happy to go into this, just because I felt my king is going to be really safe, their king is quite open and exposed, and their piece development on the queen side is very, very, very slow at the moment. So I believed that tactically this would work out for me. So I go queen d7, just to keep developing and keep everything defended. Castling is also totally reasonable, just to completely sack the pawn for the development advantage. But yeah, I choose to go queen d7, and they trade. And I was feeling pretty good about this, because they've just traded off their last developed minor piece. And they go queen c5. And of course, this makes a lot of sense, because if I try and defend the pawn with a move like rook c8, we're going to get hit by bishop e3, rook c7 to try and keep both pawns defended, and something like rook a3, and there's actually no way to defend both pawns. I'm losing a pawn by force in that position. But I have a really, really nice trick. I have a couple of moves here. I can just castle, get my king to safety, fully sack the pawn, and my development advantage is enough. But I think I have a better move. I think the move I play in the game is a better move. If you want to take a second to pause it, it's a really interesting position. There are lots and lots of ideas here worth exploring. If you have a moment to have a look through it. Sorry, give me 1 second. But yeah, I choose to play the move f6. And the point of this move is that my bishop, the second it opens up, is on a really, really beautiful diagonal, and it's a real, real pain to deal with. And and suddenly, once my knight jumps to f5 and my bishop is open up, my two minor pieces are just so much better than their two that it just felt like I got enough compensation for it. But also, concretely, tactically, this move works, because, yeah, again, if you want to pause it, try to figure out why. You absolutely can. I'd highly encourage it. I think it's a good way to learn. But yes, my opponent, if they want to, they can take on c6, sorry. And they can totally do this, but what I've seen is takes, and I can take the pawn in the center. And you might think, oh my gosh, you've blundered. Your knight was defended by the bishop. You've moved your bishop, now the knight's hanging. But unfortunately, it's a double kind of idea, because this bishop, similarly to my bishop being an attacker and a defender, this bishop is also an attacker and a defender. And when they move away to attack this knight, b2 becomes loose, and I'm picking up a full rook, and this is just a very, very comfortable position for black, if not just objectively completely winning. So, in this position, they can do that, and then not take the knight, but it's very, very uncomfortable to go into that kind of position where your pawns are so loose and my development is so good. Now, sorry, patience with me, please, because I've got a little bit of hay fever at the moment. It's so warm, I cannot deal with the temperatures. So they can't take immediately, but they have another option. And what they do play in the game is e takes f6. And I recapture, because this is, of course, I think my only move. And here, yet again, it looks like I'm losing a pawn. But if you want to take a second, try and figure out what's going on here. If they take the pawn, I have a really nice move here. I can actually play bishop takes c3. And if they take here, that's absolutely fine. I'm up in exchange, and I think I'm just doing well in that position. But if they don't, if they take the rook, full rook hanging with check, I have this brilliant move. King to f7. And the bishop, the hanging bishop all the way from c3, keeps an eye on the rook on h8. And this queen has no squares that it can actually move to. Every single square is covered by another one of my pieces. And it's how important piece development is, and the ability to sort of just have confidence in your ability and in your position, and that you've played your theory correctly. Even though it looks like I'm losing a pawn, the ideas just work out for me. I saw this idea, I was praying my opponent would fall for it. But no, my opponent's a very strong player. They do take, but then they slide over with their rook to h3, getting out of the way of the attack. But I'm still very happy here, because I just bring my knight out to f5. I've got improved development. I'm threatening to even win the queen on the spot. And I think that my play is much easier. I can play push in the center, I can use the open files, and I've just got more development. My opponent goes c3 to prevent me from playing bishop d4, makes a lot of sense, and I just bring my rook to the open file. Apply some pressure and try and make it more difficult for my opponent to develop their bishop. So they bring their queen back, get it out of the way, potentially have some options to rotate to the king's side. Of course, not immediately, but eventually trying to get something going there. I castle, get my rook on the same file as the queen, apply some pressure to the slightly weak f4 pawn. I can play for e5, I can bring my queen forward, and I can also reroute my knight to these really nice d6 squares, looking at the c4 and e4 outposts. I thought, at this point, I didn't know if my position was objectively winning, but it felt really, really comfortable, and I was very, very happy to play this kind of position. Yet again, still developing this bishop to anywhere is really uncomfortable, because it weakens their queenside so much, so they bring out the knight, and now I play my knight back to d6. And the point of this move is that, first of all, good control over the center and good control over their pawn breaks, and if they now choose to move this knight anywhere, I can jump in with my knight to the e4 or c4 squares and apply some real pressure. My opponent doesn't have many other moves to make. If you start pushing these pawns, then you create weaknesses that I can target, so they've not got many other choices, so they do choose to bring their knight out to b3, trying to take advantage of potentially slightly weak dark squares, because all my pawns are on light squares. But now I can centralize my knight on this beautiful e4 outpost, attack the queen, do it with tempo, and now I find a big pawn break in the center, which it took me a minute to decide whether to play or not, because I'm giving up, I'm sort of releasing their weakness on f4, which was potentially a target, but I think the activity that I gain with my centralized bishop and my centralized knight is just so incredibly worth it, especially while their development is still so lacking. And now my opponent believes, I believe, makes quite a serious mistake. They find this move knight to d4. And if you want to pause yet again, I think that the move I play as black in this position is very, very annoying if you want to try and find it. I play queen to g4. And the issue is I'm concretely just threatening mate. I'm just threatening mate in one on the board, and it's really hard to stop it. It's a really, really annoying position. Because you can't really develop this bishop, because the b2 pawn is hanging, and you can block with the rook, but yet again it's creating some weaknesses, potentially ideas of taking on d4, potentially ideas of trading here. And still, just yet again, their position is very stuck. Potentially ideas of queen h4, take advantage of these weak dark squares, and I just felt very, very comfortable in this position. My opponent does make a mistake, I believe. They play knight f3. And now, yet again, lots of tactics, a lot of fun ideas in this position. Take a second, there's one clear best move for black in this position, and I find it's a slow move. Just prophylaxis, slow. Figure out where the holes are, and I bring back my bishop. Bring back my bishop. And the issue is, I'm going to b6. And how do you deal with this pin? How do you deal with this pin? If you move your king, then you're running into a whole lot of other tactics, and a whole lot of other tactics with knight f2 as well. And that can be really, really uncomfortable. If you bring your knight back, then there's still a mate on d1. So, my opponent, I think the top engine move in this position, by the way, is rook h4, which tells you sort of how desperate this position is. I actually looked at rook h4 in the game. I was like, that might even be his best move. And crazily enough, it was. But he makes probably the more natural one. He goes bishop d2. And by the way, there are plenty of winning moves in this position. If you take your time, you can figure out a lot of the winning plans. I think just rook takes b2 cleanly wins the game on the spot very easily. I choose to try and transpose into an endgame. I try and change the nature of the position. I want to make it simpler, just a really easy, comfortable conversion for me. And I choose to play knight, rook takes f3. And I'm converting into an endgame. Because basically, I'm going to get the two pieces. You can't take back with the rook, by the way, because bishop b6 is still possible. Oh yeah, sorry, by the way, bishop d2 stops bishop b6 because knight d4 is now possible, because queen d1 isn't possible because it's covered by the rook. That's the point of bishop d2. But yeah, after takes, you can't take back with the rook because of this issue. You can't take back with the pawn because it's not legal. And if you take back with queen, as they do in the game, I trade off, and I get this beautiful endgame with the two pieces for the rook and the really poorly misplaced rook on h3. At this point, my opponent offered me a draw, which I was a bit confused by, because I just thought my position was, completely winning. And the engine agrees, actually. The engine says that this is just -4. So, yeah, I was a bit confused by the draw offer, but yeah, I didn't take it. Instead, they offer me a draw as they play the move b3, trying to sort of maybe bluff me that my knight's trapped. I'm not totally sure what the idea was, but I can just bring my bishop in, bring my rook in, and yeah, you can attack my knight, sure, that's totally possible, but I can just bring my rook in, attack your king, and yeah, there were some fun lines that I was looking at here as well, like this sort of thing, with my bishop coming back, delivering a check, and there's some variations here where the king just gets mated on the side of the board. Yeah, I was hoping for this sort of thing. My opponent goes, doesn't go for rook d1. They just like shuffle their rook across, so to give the king a light square, which is very important that they can go to a light square up here, so that my bishop check is not so much of an issue. But I can just bring my bishop back, attack their rook, threaten to win another exchange, and they have to shuffle back, basically. They've got no other productive choices, and now I give the check. They're forced into the corner, and I've just got such comfortable control over this position. My two minor pieces are just absolutely dominating the position, and I go bishop f4. Now, the point of bishop f4 is I want to trade off and simplify this position. But before I do that, I want to make it really easy, as simple as possible. So what I do is, after rook d2, d1, I play king g7. And my point is, they have no moves. My point is, my opponent has no productive moves in this position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play g5, I'm going to play king g6, I'm going to play h5, h4, trap this rook, and then I'm going to go rook f2, trade off the rooks, and I'm basically going to be playing the position up two pieces. And there's going to be nothing my opponent can do about it. The two pieces are easily enough to convert that endgame. So my opponent doesn't allow that. They go rook h4. And by the way, I can totally still go g5 here and go for the same thing, but I thought knight f3 was in fact easier. You can't take my bishop because the mate threat on h2, so they have to shuffle back. And I can take this pawn, totally winning, but I want to keep my pieces centralized. I want to keep the control on the position. And they go c4, trying to break open, but this is another slight mistake. They've got no better moves, really, but after knight e4, I'm threatening to come in here, and I'm forking three pieces. You can only move one of them this move and one of them next move, so after knight f2 next move, I'm going to win a piece. That is an exchange, That is going to happen. So we get king to g1. I threaten both rooks, and I win the exchange. My opponent plays on for a couple more moves. They play on for one more trick, actually, which is, yeah, it's a nice trick. I go knight f3, and they come here, and basically the idea is that they're going to try and, if I, let's say, just start pushing my pawn, they're going to sort of try just keep on checking my king, but I think this is really hard to do because actually you run out of checks at this point immediately, because any check that you give, I can take with my knight, and that releases your king. So even this doesn't work, but I didn't think there was any need in complicating it, so I play knight d4. I'm going to just place my knight here, and I'm just going to push the c pawn. Very nice and simple. And at this point, once that last trick has run out, my opponent chooses to resign. This is a game I'm pretty proud of. I mean, I was the higher rated player, so I was expected to win, but I still think, actually, I played a really nice game, and actually I'm really proud of a lot of the tactics I saw. I know my opponent is very, very sharp and very sort of tactically aware, so beating someone like that in their own style of game, and then converting it so cleanly through the good endgame technique, I was very, very proud of. And of course, there are faster ways to win all the way back in this position when I choose to trade off the 2 pieces for the rook, but I'm very happy with the way I decided to play it. I think it simplified it and made it easier for me. And this is why I say, actually, in congresses, you need to conserve energy. And a lot of people think that by that I mean that you've got to try and play shorter games or play, like, quickly, aggressively, and that's the way to do well in congresses. And that can be true, but also the other way to conserve energy is just to play easier positions. That's why I went for this idea, actually, is because I just wanted to play the endgame, which I felt was easier for me to play. It was going to be really hard to mess up, and it's really comfortable. So I wanted to conserve energy that way instead. And yeah, I think that's a good tip for anyone who's also looking to play their first Congress. These sort of events, you're playing potentially 9 hours of chess in a day, and that can be absolutely brutal. So you've got to find ways to conserve energy and maintain sort of the energy store. And the way of doing it, I think that's very effective, is trying to keep simple positions, which is just as important as keeping fast positions. So yeah, I hope that was interesting. I hope that was useful. And I hope that was an instructive game. I hope everyone has a lovely day. And I really, really, really hope it cools down sometime soon, preferably before my next chess game. Have a lovely day, everyone. Merry Christmas.